Spying has always been regarded as a very romantic one-man job, so to speak, one man against the whole police force or an army.
James Bond almost needs no introduction. You don't have to be some aficionado to conjure the image that belongs to the moniker. Suave, cool, sexy, dangerous, classic. A real champion of the action genre on screen and men's action on the page. But Ian Fleming's Bond, the 007 of the original novels, was a bit grittier than his slick silver screen counterparts. From the streets of Harlem to the island coast of the Caribbean, Bond and we will learn to live and let die. Bond was created in 1953 by Ian Fleming, a man with plenty of cloak and dagger activities under his belt from his time in Britain's Naval Intelligence Room 39 during World War II. He spent most of his time drawing up outlandish plans and creating commando units, essentially doing the things that M would be doing in his novels. Bond himself was born out of a combination of Fleming himself, the various bits of spycraft he concocted and encountered, along with special forces operatives like Gus March Phillips, who received his own over-the-top portrayal by Napoleon Solo. Bond was said by Fleming to look like American composer Hoagy Carmichael, but others have observed that Bond's slim build, black hair, blue eyes, and I quote, cruel look also kind of sounds like Fleming himself. Partial self-insert or not, Bond had his first outing in Casino Royale, which sold pretty well and was adapted to the small screen the next year. I only bring this up to mention that Bond is American in this adaptation, and is referred to constantly as Jimmy.
Card Sense Jimmy Bond, they call you.
Jimmy, listen to me.
I'm going to.
I'm begging you not to, Jimmy. You're a member of Combined Intelligence. Jimmy, I still love you.
Hello, Jimmy? It's Leiter again.
And that brings us to his second appearance, the at first urban, then tropical romp of Live and Let Die. If you don't at present have the Wings song stuck in your head, allow me to help.
Say live and let die.
I'm not sorry. The book follows Bond and his American counterpart Felix Leiter as they try to bust a criminal mastermind, Mr. Big, that's been making a fortune smuggling 16th century gold coins from the Caribbean, convincing those in his orbit that he is in fact the raised spirit of the great voodoo god of the dead, Baron de Samedi. To make things a little bit more personal, our villain has direct ties to SMERSH, a former real-life arm of Soviet counterintelligence, extrapolated into an organization dedicated to eliminating the operatives of the free world. Bond foremost among them. This one came out the year after Casino Royale in 1954. The adaptation of the book that came out almost 20 years later was Roger Moore's first turn as Bond, the start of a long career playing the character in 7 films over the course of 10 years. It's probably what comes to mind when you hear the story title. You'll probably notice something a little different from the jump. If you heard the description above of the plot and felt it didn't sound right, that's because the movie and book differ wildly. The scheme is different from smuggling to drug trafficking. The order of events and locations are different, with the movie leaving Harlem rather quickly in favor of the Caribbean and then New Orleans, where the novel is split between Harlem in the first half, Bond and Mr. Big's turncoat psychic wife Solitaire escaping by train as an interlude, and spending the remainder of the book in the Caribbean. Leiter, a minor character in the film, is the number 2 protagonist of the novel alongside Bond. As far as total departures the film makes, there's no Rosie Carver, no boat chases, no plane chases, alligators, hook-handed henchmen, and no Sergeant Pepper.
Secret agent? On whose side?
So what are we left with? A stripped-down, suspenseful, tough adventure story. The primary difference is tone and intent. The James Bond of the screen is a fun, sexy adventure romp, an excuse to show cool set pieces, fight scenes, and have a good time. When reading Fleming's Bond, something becomes very apparent. These are 2 entirely different animals. The Bond of the books is smooth and cool, but a lot of the trappings we associate with Connery, Moore, Brosnan, and other big screen representations are almost totally gone. There's no gadgets. While the Q department is mentioned, all of the equipment Bond is given is grounded and doesn't go into the realm of the fantastic like the films. There's no quips. Bond has a clever line here and there, but it's played straight, and often is done with a biting edge. There's no real levity in his exchanges. Our policy with Mr. Big is live and let live. In my job, he said, when we come up against a man like this one, I have another motto. It's live and let die. There's no plot armor. Bond gets in about 3 fights across the book and loses or nearly loses each of them. Bond often responds emotionally and cruelly. The unflappable swagger we think of with the character was preceded by an agent with a head full of steam, ready to smash whatever problems are in front of him. There's no scalpels in Bond's toolkit, only hammers. The picture Fleming paints of Bond is a man who is too lucky, too stubborn, and too drunk to die, and is constantly in over his head. For everything Bond gets right, there's 2 things he gets wrong. He gets the girl away from Mr. Big, but his partner ends up in the hospital. He finds a clue to how the smuggling operation works and gets his hand broken for his trouble. Every victory costs something, whether that's time, comfort, the people around him, or his own body. Bond nurses that broken hand for the rest of the book, and the injuries keep coming, with bullet wounds and animal bites. Fleming specifically marks the weeks it takes some of these injuries to heal. When the book opens, M remarks on Bond's injuries that he suffered in Casino Royale, and how he had to have skin grafts to repair more brutal scars and markings. When Bond gets hurt, he can't just walk it off. Hell, near the end of the novel, he has to train for 2 weeks to work up enough endurance to swim to the island lair of our villain. Strangely, there are fantastical elements surrounding Bond, with legends of voodoo spirits, aquariums full of sharks, nightclubs with hydraulic trapdoors, and the possibly very real psychic abilities of our Bond girl. Bond himself is not only not the super spy of the films, he's just a few rungs above most military men, and still very human. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Mr. Big in the novel is a hulking giant, a trained killer, and a special operative soldier turned kingpin and would-be conqueror, who carries an almost mystical quality about him. His followers see him as a god, and a god doesn't make mistakes. Those who deserve to die, he paused, die the death they deserve. He lords his superior intellect and thirst for power over Bond every chance he gets, being the most verbose and well-spoken character of the book. You've doubtless read Trotter's Instincts of the Herd and Peace and War, Mr. Bond. Well, I am by nature and predilection a wolf, and I live by a wolf's laws. It creates an almost otherworldly feel to the proceedings. We know Big is human, and so does Bond. But the atmosphere that he creates is a looming presence with eyes everywhere. Between a very mortal Bond and a foe that imposing, the threat is elevated to genuine suspense. Now, that's not to say that this is a Tom Clancy book, entirely grounded and serious. But it's funny to me that even the most grounded of Bonds, like the most recent reign of Daniel Craig, are still almost too spectacular when compared to the chain-smoking, hard-drinking absorber of punches this book presents, let alone the squeaky clean superhero of its adaptation. Now, this is my first Bond novel. Maybe they do get crazier as they go along, and Bond moves closer to his movie counterparts. But from here, 007 is far more grounded than we give him credit for. And aside about the nature of the book itself, this is one of those things you're bound to run into when you read stuff from different eras, that the views and the language are a bit out of step with today. The scenes in Harlem and the Caribbean never struck me as overly harmful, but they're certainly close-minded, dealing in stereotypes that'll make you tilt your head a little bit. Does it ruin the book for me? Hell no. But just a heads up. Remember.
You see, in our century, we've learned not to fear words.
Other things that'll make you tilt your head, for entirely different reasons, is how much Ian Fleming talks about food. Soft-shell crabs and tartar sauce. You got a typical American meal at a restaurant. Bond ordered old-fashioned, French fried potatoes. Then he had a big steak, small group. We know nearly every meal Bond has. There's an entire aside about how American diner food is just the worst and it doesn't forward the plot. It's just that Ian decided he wanted people to hear his issues with the dumb Americans and their food and cars and habits. Fleming will stop the plot dead to ramble about something that's on his mind. Apparently this happens a lot in Goldfinger, but complaining is replaced by golfing. Fleming was an interesting guy. Now, we're going to be talking some of the crazier plot points, so if you'd rather go into something like this cold, skip ahead a smidge while we enter spoiler territory. So, one of the most genuinely gruesome scenes is a bit of a switcheroo that's pulled in the Caribbean. Bond has a beat on one of Mr. Big's henchmen, and they get a good idea of how the gold is being smuggled out, in giant fish tanks filled with dangerous sea life that no one is going to inspect. Leiter and Bond split up, and Bond returns to find Leiter bandaged and drowned in his hotel room, having been half-eaten by a goddamn shark. The description and build in suspense coupled with Bond's horror is genuinely harrowing. It's really fantastic stuff. Protruding from Leiter's unmoving mouth is a note. Bond picks it up and reads, "He disagreed with something that ate him." To which the scene descends into a bizarre, cruel comedy with an actual postscript in parentheses that reads, "P.S. We have plenty of more jokes as good as this." The tone of it is so jarring and bizarre, it makes for one of the most memorable moments of the book. Somehow, Leiter returns and continues being a help in the series later on, sporting a spiffy prosthetic leg and hook hand. Because Ian can't decide if we're being silly or not. Outdated ideas and tangents aside, what you have is a pretty cool adventure story that keeps you on your toes. Yeah, you know Bond is gonna make it out alive, but it's shocking how much punishment he takes along the way, and how truly ruthless his adversaries are. Coming in at a sleek and tight 150 pages, I knocked the thing out on a day of air travel, finishing it as I touched down at my destination. For my introduction to the literary Bond, it was a lot of fun. A list of Bond novels and some additional information are in the description, so keep your eyes peeled at your next run to the bookstore. And if you find something in your travels that you think I should check out, I'm always looking for recommendations. Next time, we take things back, way back, to the Hyborian Age, an age of adventure. Until next time, show 'em some guts.